Right, welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed the first video on economics. That video is yours. Feel free to download it. It's always going to be in Classroom. You can just play it straight off, and watch it as many times as you want if you're into that sort of thing. Second video for today, because we've got a 3-hour session. I'm going to look at legislation once again. You may have already looked at this. Take this as a refresher. If you've never heard of it, then by all means, you watch this from scratch. In terms of what you need to know, once again, this is quite a light touch. All right, it's a bit like the economics thing. You don't need in-depth knowledge of all of these things. But I'm going to talk to you for a little bit now about consumer protection, protection of workers. I'm going to link that to a question: protection of the environment, competition, and health and safety, which again could be used for the bit of work I'm going to be setting you. So I think the thing to think about first of all is which specific areas of business need to be governed by law and why. And I'm just going to give you a few minutes to think about that by yourself. Feel free to write down some ideas and move on. Just pause this and then we'll move on as and when you are ready. You can try this at your own pace. So legislation means law, okay, and it involves the government creating and enacting, bringing in laws to protect individuals, firms, and society. And the legal environment describes the collection of legislations that impact the activities of organisation. Laws are passed through the UK Acts of Parliament. So Parliament down in Westminster, they pass laws, all types of laws, criminal, civil, family, whatever. And don't forget, we're also subject to EU laws, and we haven't left the European Union yet. We go in December, so we're still subject to EU laws. All right, let's get through this nice and quickly then. First things first, consumer protection. Consumer protection laws include the Sale of Goods Act. Anything that you buy legally must be as described, fit for purpose, and of merchantable quality. It should be at high quality. I always like to think it's Ron Seal Paint, and their kind of branding, their slogan is it does what it says on the tin. Paint is paint. All right. When I buy paint, I don't want to drink it, I don't want to eat it, I don't want to put it in the oven and cook it. I want to paint something with it. Is it as described? Yes, paint is paint. Is it fit for purpose? Does it stick to my wall? Yes, it's paint. Is it of merchantable quality? Can I buy it from a shop in a tin? Yes, I can. Then the Sale of Goods Act has been met. You got the Trade Descriptions Act. Goods must be fully as described, i.e., descriptions cannot be in any way misleading. I often look at some of the advertising, say for Lucozade Sport, and it almost gives me the impression that if I drink this stuff, I'm going to be better at football. I'm rubbish at football, no matter how much Lucozade Sport I drink. But they're not sitting there saying, if you drink Lucozade Sport, you will be better at football. They're just using that kind of imagery on their advertising to kind of link it to, a healthy lifestyle. When you play sport, drink Lucozade, get your health back, get your energy back, that kind of stuff. There isn't anything misleading. You've got loads of stuff at the moment on Amazon and eBay, and quite often it revolves around women. You see this in the news. They see a nice dress. They see it, on Amazon. It looks really good. It's nice and cheap. They buy it, and what they actually get is kind of a bin bag in an envelope. It doesn't fit them, and it looks terrible and nothing like what the item described was. So that case fails on the Sale of Goods Act and the Trade Descriptions Act. We also have the Consumer Protection Act, where businesses are liable for any costs incurred as a result of faulty or damaged products. For example, if I buy a toy, I don't realise that a bit's fallen off and there's a sharp edge. I give it to my son, he plays with it and cuts himself. The business need to compensate me for that. That's not my fault. Also, prices quoted must be correct and not misleading. eBay has trouble with this. People kind of, I don't know, putting in dodgy pricing, stuff like that. But maybe eBay's a bit different to what you see in a shop. If you went into H&M and saw a jumper for £400, that's probably going to be a bit of a misleading price. Right, in terms of employee protection, then, and this kind of comes down to the work that I'm going to be setting you, employee protection is there to keep employees' rights safe in the workplace. Okay, we have the Equal Pay Act. Both genders, both sexes should be treated equally for work, so it's kind of the same pay for the same job. Similarly, the Sex Discrimination Act, this outlaws discrimination based on gender for recruitment, promotion, training, or dismissal. And we've got something called the glass ceiling effect, where quite often, certainly for women, and also for kind of ethnic minorities and BAME communities, they could get promoted a certain level, but they could never get to the top. And that glass ceiling was like they were in their office and they could look up through the glass ceiling and see the CEOs and the directors who would happen to be mostly old or middle-aged white men, but they couldn't break through that. They couldn't get into those top levels. And the Sex Discrimination Act is trying to break that down. The Race Relations Act means we can't discriminate based on colour. So just as we can't discriminate based on gender, we cannot based on skin colour. And similarly, the Disability Discrimination Act, it's illegal to discriminate against disabled people. And when we hire disabled people, we need to make provision to assist. So, for example, we might have to put in ramps to let somebody in a wheelchair in, stuff like that. Working time regulations in the UK, we cannot be forced to work more than 48 hours a week if we choose to do so, because we've got a lot of work to do. That's fine. Our managers can't force us to do so. And the national minimum wage and the London living wage, a minimum hourly wage rate introduced across the UK. So again, nice and quick, that keeps us safe at work and non-discriminated against. What we also see is something called collective labour law. Okay, all that means is that, say I went to Jill, the principal, and I said, "Look, I want a £10,000 pay rise. If you don't, I'm gonna quit." She'd laugh at me, or, "Oh, Neil, off you go, quit. No one cares." I'm part of a trade union, the NEU, the National Education Union, used to be called NUT, the National Union of Teachers. We work as a collective. So if our union representative, if the top person in the union goes to Jill and says, "Look, all of our members, and there's 100 within this college, want a say £2,000 pay rise, or they're going to go on strike," you need to listen. And that means that Jill has got a union now. She's going to take a union of 100 people far more seriously than she'd take just me. All right. The Employment Act was seen to outlaw closed shops where all workers belong to a single union. Way back when, say out in Detroit in America on the Ford production line, employees were almost forced to join a single union. And, the unions got far too powerful. What we see in education now is we've got the NEU, we've got the ATL. There's about 3 different trade unions, and we have freedom of choice. We join the union that we think best represents us. The Trade Union Reform Act, unions have got to give employees at least 7 days notice of industrial action meaning strikes. So we can't just call what we call a fire strike or a flash strike by the union just, "We're going to go on strike in the next half an hour." Because obviously if workers go on strike, they will lose their pay. So if teachers do take a strike, there's got to be a vote, and we need 7 days notice to do so. And the Employment Relations Act, the right to recognition of a union in the workplace if 50% belong to a union. If me and my mate set up a trade union, just the two of us at the college, and then we went to Jill and asked for £10,000 pay rises, she could just as rightly laugh at the two of us, and she would say, "Well, hang on, there's only two of you. I don't even recognise you as a union." If I set up a union with 100 of my colleagues, that's over 50% of teachers within the college, then we become a union because there's enough of us, and she would have to listen. Okay. We've got laws to protect the environment. These laws help to ensure that firms do not have a negative impact on the environment. And the key one there is the Environmental Protection Act. Firms must improve the control of pollution arising from industrial and other processes. The Environment Act says that firms must clean up any contaminated sites that they own. By contaminated, we mean if they're dumping chemicals, anything like that, or just mess, asbestos, cardboard, whatever, they've got to clean it up. And the Act also established the Environment Agency, which is the kind of government body that check that firms are not polluting. And what we're seeing now, we've got new green, environmentally friendly production, new products that meet better environmental standards, and more of us are recycling as well. Okay, so environmental protection has been great. People like Greta Thunberg think we need to do more. Yeah, I'll leave you to think about that. Okay, coming towards the end, people, a lot of words going on here. As I said, feel free to watch this as much as you want. The government needs to look at competition. And what the government don't want is something called a monopoly, where one business pretty much owns the whole market. Now, this in Britain is any more than 25% market share. Think back to your theme one notes, market share, how much of a market a business owns, so to speak. And if a firm's got more market power, it lets the firm set prices above those that will be charged if there's more competition, because we've got nowhere else to go. You know what I mean? If one firm owns the market and I want to buy that good, I can only go to that supplier. Monopolies exploit us as consumers, as customers, by charging high prices. Therefore, we regulate monopolies to protect the customer. And what the government want is free and fair competition. So back in the day, British Rail used to be a monopoly. If you wanted to go Somewhere in Britain on the mainline train, you will go with British Rail. Prices were high, service was terrible. When people complained, who cares? Because that's the only supplier. If you don't want to go, if you don't want to use this, you can't go anywhere. Now we've got loads of different companies operating across the UK. Prices have come down, believe it or not, and yeah, quality of service has improved. And the last one, health and safety. Now, we often think about the big cases of health and safety. I'm thinking years back at Alton Towers, that tragedy, I think it was on the Smiler ride, it malfunctioned. I think it was a trainee or someone new in their job operating the ride. Two girls lost a leg each. And one other lady, I think it was seriously injured with broken ribs and stuff like this. And obviously, these three women went to Alton Towers, or what is it Merlin, the company that owns Alton Towers, to court and won substantial multi-million pound settlements. But we can also think a lot lower. Health and safety is there to look after the general health and safety of employees in the workplace. It tries to protect employees from exploitation and poor health and safety, illness and injury. For example, we've got the Health and Safety at Work Act. A firm must provide safe working environment with free safety equipment and clothing. If you're a builder on a work site, you shouldn't have to buy your own hat, the hard hat that you wear. That should be provided for you because you're an employee of the company. They should be looking after you. There's got to be a health and safety policy, and your trade union has to have a health and safety representative that can inspect the workplace before work can start. And just like the environmental executive was set up to look at the environment, we've also got the health and safety executive set up by the government to oversee this. If anybody's injured at work or dies at work, and this does happen, health and safety executive will look into that. The health and safety regulations have to be in place to provide adequate first aid provision, but we also have stuff like health and safety regulations on display screen equipment, computers. Teachers can get free eye tests. We work with these projectors and smart boards and computers that do fry our eyes, fry our retinas, seriously. And employers must consult with employees on any changes to health and safety in the workplace. So there we go. That's pretty much it for that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put this piece of work up as an assessed piece. It's about Winglar. These worksheets that I use, I think they're from Tutor to You. Yeah, they are indeed. The company never paid for naming rights for a lot of the businesses. Winglar is Ryanair. So if you know anything about Ryanair, think about the dodginess that it does with its marketing campaigns and its employees. Simply read through the data. We're going to do question number 1 for 10 marks. Assess the likely impact of Winglar failing to meet employee protection legislation. So you need to really go back to the PowerPoint and you're thinking about employee protection there and there. Okay, it's a tough one, but have a think. And in terms of the structure, go back to my videos, go back to the resources, and there you go. And again, I'm going to deadline this for this afternoon at 4:30. So basically, in the 3-hour session, you've got the PowerPoint on economics, the worksheet, get it handed in. PowerPoint on legislation, the 10-mark question. That's 3 hours worth of work. All right. So I will communicate with you through Classroom, and I will see you this time next week, 1:30 next week, for a proper online interactive Zoom lesson. I look forward to it. Work hard, people. Adios.